Gil Hoffman is an Israeli-American journalist and political correspondent who serves as Executive Director of Honest Reporting. He was previously Chief Political Correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. Honest Reporting is an Israeli media advocacy group, a pro-Israel media watchdog. It describes its mission as combating ideological prejudice in journalism and the media as it impacts Israel. We're going to try and do something that's going to be a bit more complicated than usual.
That's fine. I can handle complicated. I live here.
Yeah, you've got it full bore. So I'm talking
Yeah.
with Gil Hoffman, who heads up Honest Reporting, a job that no doubt is extraordinarily tough going from time to time.
Indeed.
Welcome back to the program, Gil.
Pleasure being with you, David.
Now, what we're doing today is something that is a little bit more unusual than usual, so to speak. We're going to look at some of the things that have been said about Israel that reveal the gross inequities of the way that the media treats Israel. And we're going to start off with an example that you exposed on Honest Reporting. I think we can see this on the screen at the moment about Iranian strikes exposing bomb shelter shortage for Palestinian towns inside Israel. Now, I'm going to play this little video clip, and after that, can I ask you, Gil, to perhaps describe why this report from CNN has serious shortcomings?
No problem.
4 members of the Khatib family were killed in this strike on their family home. A mother, 2 of her daughters, the youngest just 13, and a relative who was visiting. You can see the scale of the destruction as a result of the impact of that missile hitting, and it really extends down the block. And in many ways, this strike, it really gets to not just the tragedy of this conflict, but also the complexity. This town, Tamra, is a Palestinian-Israeli town. And there was social media video online last night, verified by CNN, that showed people from a neighboring town actually cheering as they saw those missiles coming down onto Tamra. They could be heard rejoicing, "May your village burn." And it's important to mention as well that we've also seen videos on social media of Palestinians cheering as missiles rain down near the city of Tel Aviv. And we spoke to a priest, Father Huri, who told us that he believes innocent people are losing their lives because of the actions of bad leaders.
We want all of them to sit on the same table and to sit like brother, sons of Abraham, and to say it's enough, because violence calls violence and blood calls blood. It's easy to know how to start wars, but only God knows how it's going to finish.
Shortly after we finished talking to Father Huri, the sirens went off again, and we were ushered into a shelter in the house across from the Khatib family home. And the woman who lives in that house, who witnessed and lived through what happened last night, visibly shaken, crying, trembling, deeply fearful for her life. The all clear has been given. People are getting back to the work of cleaning up, and it's going to be a big job.
Can you tell us, Gil, why there are issues with the way that CNN have reported this story?
So look, first of all, this is a war in which Israel is trying to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So that should be something that the entire West unites about, that certainly people in Australia should be worried about, that they should be thankful to Israel for taking care of. And yet the international media has to always find some kind of way to make Israel look bad, even when we're obviously the good guy. So what they did over here at CNN was they tried to make Israel look racist. When we had this terrible tragedy that four beautiful women were killed in tragically in Tamra in an Israeli Arab town in northern Israel, I thought the world would see, look, Israel's diverse. Israel has in it is Jews and Arabs fighting together, Jews and Arabs being killed together. I actually thought it would be something that would make the world understand Israel better. But instead, CNN tried to make it look like Jews have bomb shelters and Arabs don't. The fact is, Jews and Arabs don't have enough bomb shelters in Israel. Um, Buildings that have been built since 1992 require there to be a bomb shelter. Before that, they don't. And so in places where there are older buildings, then there are fewer bomb shelters. That's true in a Jewish town, it's true in a Christian town, it's true in a Muslim town. These were Christians who were killed. And they actually did have a bomb shelter. The father was there, and one of the daughters came in, and he asked, "Where's your mom and your sisters?" And she said they didn't make it. And when the two of them came out, they weren't alive. And so it's very sad, but it's not something to try to make Israel look like it builds bomb shelters for Jews and not for Arabs. The Israeli government has to serve the entire population, no matter who they are. And it's just absurd to think that Israel would discriminate against Christians.
I mean, the building of bomb shelters would be the responsibility of the people who construct the buildings as such. Is it the responsibility of the government to be doing this as such?
Look, there are laws, there are regulations when you build, and right now, if you want to build a beautiful home here, David, with all the huge amount of money you've made in the Israel connection over the years, you're going to have a bomb shelter.
So let's move on to another story that's been on your website and it's coming up now. It's about this common story we hear about journalists in Gaza being killed by Israel, but you reveal that many of these journalists are in fact people who are working for Hamas. Now I'm going to play a video here that's come out from Hassan Azli. Maybe you can explain who he is. And after that, perhaps you can explain what the story is behind this particular journalist and many others who are operating in
No
Gaza.
problem.
Hassan Asliach was no journalist. He was a terrorist with a camera. But he didn't just film Hamas, he belonged to it. Asliach was a verified member of Hamas's Khan Yunis brigade. We're not speculating, we're not guessing. We have the receipts. Internal documents, communications, and footage linking him directly to the terror machine. Asliach didn't just cover the October 7th massacre, he helped carry it out. While civilians screamed and bled, he filmed the horrors in order to glorify them. His camera was his weapon, his footage was a trophy. We can now confirm that Asliach was eliminated in a precise IDF strike while hiding within the Nasser hospital. We will always protect our civilians and eliminate any threats posed towards them or the state of Israel.
So, David, Hassan Asliach was a leader of Hamas. He was a paid operative by Hamas, and he worked as a journalist. He took pictures and video for the Associated Press and for CNN. And on October 7th, he just happened to be one of the first journalists at the burning tank over on Israel's side of the border from Gaza that was commanded by a young soldier who came to Israel from Long Island in the United States, named Omer Nutra, whose body is still being kept in Gaza, disgustingly. And so we asked at Honest Reporting, how did he know to be there so early to be able to take these pictures? And sure enough, we found a picture of him being kissed by Yahya Sinwar, that of Hamas. And then over time, it came out, the IDF revealed actual Hamas documents proving that he was an active Hamas terrorist.
Okay. Now, we've had many other stories coming from Gaza. Now, this one relates to a pediatrician. Apparently had 9 children, and she lost all of these children in an Israeli airstrike, apparently about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Now, there are many aspects of this particular story that just don't add up. Do you want to go through some of the points about this that expose that this really might well have been a total sham?
Looking back, I think we still don't know the facts of this story, but there's always an interest to try to make it look like Israel is purposely murdering civilians, when the truth is that Israel has done more to minimize civilian deaths on both sides of the border than any army in the history of mankind on this earth. And to make it look like there's this Arab woman doctor with 9 children and that Israel killed her children, obviously would make Israel look terrible. But it's already been revealed that the pictures aren't real, and it's debatable whether they existed, and that it looks like there's a well choreographed story here that wasn't true, and a lot of people fell victim to it around the world.
Yeah, pictures here that we're showing now, which most
Some of
likely
this
were
is
AI
AI.
generated.
Right now, anyone can make a picture that looks very real, and I mean, who takes a picture of nine bodies with a woman in between? Like, it's just should have raised eyebrows. People shouldn't have believed it. And one thing that has to be understood with both this story and the previous one, David, is that Israel made a very controversial decision already more than 10 years ago not to let journalists come into Gaza except when they're embedded with the IDF, which is rare. It happened a couple of weeks ago, but it's rare. And because of that, the information that's coming out of Gaza is coming from ordinary Gazans with cell phones who, if they want to live, need to be loyal to Hamas and present their narrative. There's no Edward R. Murrow or Daniel Pearl, big wartime journalists covering this war in Gaza. The typical Gazan journalist is al-Jamal, the guy who might have been a journalist for the Palestinian Chronicle in part-time, but he was holding terrorists hostage, holding Israeli civilians hostage like a terrorist full-time. And so you cannot trust information that's coming out of Gaza.
Most certainly the case. Now, I'm going to play a short clip from Piers Morgan, where he was talking to Benny Morris.
I'd like to make a comment about what your previous guest was saying. He said he spoke about objectivity or something. The man is a total Hamas propagandist. Half the things he said were outright lies. Lots of doctors have been abducted and have disappeared is total nonsense. I know of 1 or 2 cases of doctors who were taken to an Israeli detention center. What happened to them afterwards, I don't know. I don't think they've been killed. I think they are under arrest for whatever reason. But
so they could have been abducted.
Many doctors have been. Many doctors.
You're basically agreeing with him, aren't you?
No, I'm not. I'm saying that he talked about.
You just said you know of some doctors who were detained. You've no idea what happened to them.
I know of 1 or 2
but
doctors.
You're confirming his story.
No, I'm not. I'm confirming a small part of what is true. The rest is a lie, as is a large part of what he's saying. Had Israel wanted to kill all the Palestinians, that's what genocide actually means, there would have been many, many, many more deaths in Gaza. Each time Israel launches an air raid, we hear of the Palestinians saying 24 people have died, 30 people have died, and I'm sure many of them are civilians, but I'm also sure that the Air Force going in against these targets is attacking Hamasniks. We never hear from the Hamas how many of their people are being killed in these strikes. All we hear about and all we see on television is dead babies and dead women. They never show grown male, army-aged males being taken out of these ruins. And the Hamas uses these things systematically, the schools, the hospitals, various so-called safe compounds to hide in.
But out of interest, all right. But
I don't know whether you have any views about Piers Morgan, who lately has become rather brutal when he comes to talking to people who are supportive of Israel's position. One of the things that Benny Morris says in the part of this clip, and the person he's sitting next to is Norman Finkelstein, who has this awful glare on his face the whole time. One of the things that he says, and I've heard a lot of other people who are sympathetic to Israel that say that Israel has really not done the right thing by preventing journalists from going into Gaza. And like you've just been describing, the consequence of this is the reportage that comes out of Gaza by those who are there, who are essentially Palestinians who are under the yoke of Hamas and can't really say anything that is against Hamas for fear of serious retribution. So people like Benny Morris say that this is wrong, what Israel's done. I've also heard Jonathan Conricus say the same thing. Do you have an opinion on this, or is this something that you don't really want to comment on?
This is a double-edged sword, David, where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If Israel had let journalists come into Gaza, a lot of journalists would have been killed in the line of fire. Right now, the CPJ, the Council of Professional Journalists, they're counting in their tally of journalists killed in the line of fire. They're counting people who were killed working for propaganda channels of Hamas, Hezbollah, and right now Iran.
So, what do you look at the reportage from Piers Morgan, who's really quite a sensationalist? Does that attract your attention at all?
Piers Morgan is respected as a journalist around the world, and when he acts much more belligerently to people on his show presenting the Israeli side than he does others, and then that's something that harms Israel tremendously. We need to be monitoring what he says. We need to hold him accountable when he gets things wrong. We need to make sure that he handles such as controversial issues sensitively. And that's why there need to be media watchdogs.
Because one of the interviews he did with Natasha Hausdorff, who's with UK Lawyers for Israel, was especially egregious.
So how many children has Israel killed?
If we go back to the
question... Can you answer my question?
If you go back to the ratio...
Do you know my...
No, but I can tell you the ratio, even on the basis of Hamas figures.
You can tell me the ratio without... But how do you know if you don't know how many have died?
The amount of steps that Israel takes, unprecedented in the history of armed conflict, and military commanders will tell you...
Sorry, it just is.
Which other army?
It just is. Which other war in recent times have you had half the population is under 18 and you killed 20,000 kids? You're a smart lawyer. Do you not understand how ridiculous that sounds? If we were in a courtroom now, you would be demolished by a fellow lawyer.
In response, Natasha Hausdorff wrote a piece in The Spectator titled "Why Can't Piers Morgan Handle the Truth About Israel?", arguing that Morgan and much of the Western media are unwilling to confront the legal and moral facts about Israel's conduct in the war, and she accused him of censorship, emotional grandstanding, and a refusal to engage seriously with pro-Israel voices. But somebody who actually commented a bit more deeply on the issue says that Natasha Hausdorff failed to expose one key fact about his refusal to accept the logic of this war, that Hamas is designed to be unwinnable without the horror that we see going on. So many people like Morgan don't want to live in a world where adequate self-defense, which is what Israel's doing, actually necessitates widespread civilian death. So instead of confronting that fact, he denies it, and he insists in various ways that there must be another way. But there isn't, and by refusing to face this, he ends up implying, whether he means it or not, must not do what is necessary to defend itself. So this is a point, I don't know whether you push this out at all through honest reporting, that this is
Natasha can defend herself quite well. You might encourage people to read what she wrote for The Spectator and any other articles she writes. She's a wonderful defender of Israel using international law. Even the Pierce Morgans of the world, they can't handle her because she has all the facts ready. And I guess that we wish in Israel that we had the neighbors that you have there in Australia. No one. We have to deal with belligerent enemies on most of our sides here and not too far away. And when they are using human shields and tunnels and all kinds of tactics that violate the laws of war, we need to do what we can to defend ourselves and to try to end this war in a way that will have the best outcome, bringing safety and security for the people of Israel and for the people in Gaza too. This war was started by Hamas, and everything that's happened since it started on October 7th has been Hamas's fault. And we need to keep on hammering that message home.
Now, one of the things that is constantly referred to is this supposed famine in Gaza, the starvation in Gaza, the more than 2 million Palestinians in Gaza being at risk of famine as Israel's blockade on food, shelter, medicine, and other aid continues. Well, of course, it's not continuing, but there has been an aid program sent up by now the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Now, this seems to be having a lot of problems operating smoothly. And I'm playing a clip here from ABC News in America. So we'll have a listen to that, or actually watch that. And that talks about the many concerns to do with the aid distribution that is happening, where Palestinians seem to be killed in dozens almost every single day, and that is being blamed on Israel, and Israel is saying that it's investigating it, but doesn't know too many details, and it all goes into a kind of a foggy mystery that never seems to be resolved properly.
At least 30 people were killed in Gaza while attempting to get food at an aid site in the central part of the territory. It's one of many recent incidents during which Israel has killed Palestinians, primarily who were seeking handouts of food, aid, and shelter. Let's turn now to Tom Sufi Burridge. And Tom, what do the Israeli Defense Forces say happened here?
Yeah, Lindsay, the IDF says the incident is under review. Now, they say that they have no reports or no information about IDF fire during daylight hours, corresponding to some of the video circulating in the media. But they do say that they once again have fired what they call warning shots, quote, towards suspects. Now, we have asked Israeli officials to clarify what warning shots towards people means, because it's a slightly confusing term, and we're waiting for clarification on that. But as you say, this is another incident near to one of those aid distribution sites in Gaza, another deadly incident, and once again it is raising questions about the morality behind this scheme and whether or not it is contributing not only to the desperation and the hunger in Gaza, but also to the death toll from the war.
Of course, so many questions. This is one of 4 aid sites in operation. Who's manning these sites, and is enough aid getting through?
Yeah, this is the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Basically, it's an American-backed group, American companies. I interviewed their new executive chairman just a few days ago. Look, they're running the sites themselves. There's only 4 of them. They're quite limited areas that Gazans have to move towards in what they call safe corridors. And once, if people have deviated from those safe corridors, that's when we've seen these deadly incidents, according to the IDF. But look, you know, we've seen huge crowds turn up to these areas. Look, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation says it has distributed millions and millions of meals to thousands and thousands of Gazans. It says it is doing the best it can to alleviate the hunger of people in Gaza. But look, international aid agencies have refused to participate in this scheme. They accuse the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation of basically being part of Israel's military strategy, because Israel has wanted this type of scheme to be up and running because it says it is necessary to prevent aid going into the hands of Hamas, which it alleges was going on in the past throughout the war. The UN says there's no clear evidence of that. But look, it's a contentious scheme. When I interviewed the new executive chairman of that group, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, look, he said he pushed back very strongly on the criticism. And he said, look, I'm not doing this. We're not doing this so that anybody dies. Quite the opposite. And he pushed back on the notion that the scheme itself is actually putting people in disproportionate danger.
Can I give you the latest developments here, David?
Oh, that's what I'm waiting for you to perhaps say something on this, because at the moment,
no problem. So first of all, there was another report this time accusing Israel of killing 51 people on the BBC that turned out to not have any evidence. I know who was killed. The aid workers themselves from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, people that had just started work, that they were on their way to work on the first day. Their bus got stopped and they were taken out of the bus and murdered. They were shot. They were brought to a hospital, and there the hospital workers were threatened by Hamas to not do anything to try to save their lives. In fact, the Gaza humanitarian workers were beaten in the hospital.
With global outrage swirling about the shooting of Palestinian civilians at aid centers, a new bombshell statement from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is shedding new light on the situation, saying 12 aid workers were murdered by Hamas while others were tortured. Well, Shimon Myers, CEO of Arise, is back to unpack this news. So, Shimon, what do you think about what GHF revealed?
Well, it should be something that garners global outrage. Why are we hearing nothing about this?
And despite all this, the aid stations are now working at full force. There are now 4 aid stations around Gaza that ordinary Gazans can go and receive their food. It just happened yesterday with very little fanfare that the project was completed of having it ready to go in all 4 places. And now there can really be no complaints about any famine in Gaza anymore. Which there never was a famine in Gaza. There was hardship, of course, which happens during a war, but it's very rare that one party feeds the other, and then knowing full well that the food will be stolen by Hamas away from its people and then sold to the people for huge amounts of money that will then be used for weapons. That's what Israel was up against. I think the world didn't understand. And now that an independent aid agency not related to Hamas or to the corrupt United Nations is working at full force, this is something that takes away the prestige of Hamas from its people, that now that they don't depend on Hamas for food, they don't need to be supporting Hamas. And this is an important step on the way to Gaza being governed by people who care about its own people, and not by a terrorist organization that has hurt its own people so much.
Yeah, the incident with the Gaza humanitarian aid workers on the bus, I find it a little bit troublesome that they were actually traveling on a bus without proper security, that Israel wasn't there, or IDF wasn't there to ensure their safety in getting to their destination. That seems a little bit of a problem to me, that actually happened like that.
I don't know, but it's been going on since then every day. And it hasn't made headlines because no one has been killed lately among the aid workers. And we hope that project really succeeds for the good of the people of Gaza.
Well, certainly, yes. Hamas is trying to sabotage it as much as possible. But you can see this is our ABC in the last 24 hours. And this is the sort of information that's constantly being disseminated here for people to see and seemingly believe. So this is kind of what we're up against it. And when Israel responds, it's always with vague remarks that the IDF will be looking into it.
Yep, they have to look into it, but people can ask for themselves whether Israel has any interest in firing at ordinary Gazans when we're in the middle of a war in Iran. It doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, it absolutely doesn't make sense. And there's a lot, I think, that's not being revealed that would be revealed if there were impartial observers on the ground to relay the information to us here in the West. But that's unfortunately not the case. We know that there's also been, in relation to what we've just been discussing, there's been a lot of looting of the humanitarian aid, which is the primary driver behind these moves to have the aid managed properly. And that's why it was taken out of the UN's hands, because all that was happening was that the aid was being rifled by gangs, largely Hamas operatives. There's a report on the ABC radio here, and I'll play that. And after that, I'll ask you to make some comments. I don't know whether you've heard it. This is a report from Chris Sidoti, who's the commissioner on the UN's Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory and Israel, who was asked about the pillaging of aid, and he denied it absolutely and insisted that Israel just lies all the time.
Israel has frequently put forward the argument that it provided enough aid to Gaza, but that a large amount of the aid was stolen and resold by Hamas. Have we seen any clear evidence that that argument is true?
No, none. And in fact, all of the international agencies, both UN agencies and non-government agencies that are operating there on the ground, say that they have seen no evidence of diversion of food assistance or other medical assistance to Hamas. And the Israeli authorities themselves have produced no evidence of that. Again, it falls into the category of simple assertion, assertion as part of a whole fabric of lying to try to deceive people. But no one's deceived anymore. What's going on in Gaza is absolutely crystal clear, and the lies of the Israeli government are no longer accepted anywhere.
Have you made any posts about Chris Sidoti and his partner on this inquiry, who's been in the news today, Navi Pillay, who's also been expressing views that are incredibly...
With a strong history of anti-Semitism.
Have you made any posts about Chris Sidoti and his partner on this inquiry, who's been in the news today, Navi Pillay, who's also been expressing views that are incredibly...
With a strong history of anti-Semitism. And yet the United Nations gives posts to these people who are certainly not credible. You said that there should be credible people in Gaza who are independent, who can be trusted. And unfortunately, there aren't. People need to realize that. Yes, honest reporting has repeatedly taken to task the media outlets that have parroted the United Nations incorrect accusations about Israel, and they continue to parrot them even after they've been proven false. And that's a problem, because outside of Israel and the Jewish community, people trust the United Nations as some reputable, impartial organization, whereas in Israel, after decades of the United Nations singling out Israel instead of helping out conflicts around the world, and being so disproportionate in its handling of Israel, and now proven during this war to have been very much at fault for educating Gazans to grow up to want to become martyrs and fighters instead of doctors, lawyers, and accountants, and the way the United Nations buildings were taken over by Hamas, or the underground tunnels use the electricity and water from and internet from the United Nations buildings. It's been proven really here that the United Nations and Hamas are hopelessly intertwined, and so no one should trust anything coming out from one because it really is the other.
Yeah, I'll play a short video here from AJAC, the Australian Israel Jewish Affairs Council here in Australia, that shows how Hamas has been stealing humanitarian aid, exploiting Gazans as part of that strategy. And the clip shows what Hamas does with all the aid that's been coming in.
Someone is starving the people of Gaza, and it's not who you think it is. Hamas has been stealing humanitarian aid, exploiting Gazans as part of their strategy. Let's look at the facts. Even before Hamas's massacre on October 7th that started this war, Hamas controlled the crossings, giving them direct access to loot the goods coming in. But when the war began, that wasn't enough anymore, so they turned to other methods. They began collecting protection payments from Gazan civilians, taking from 15% up to 30% taxes on humanitarian aid entering Gaza, collecting them either in the form of cash or goods, selling at overpriced rates or distributing to families of Hamas operatives. During the war, Hamas's Supreme Emergency Committee issued a direct order: divert 15% of all humanitarian aid for Hamas's own use. 7% went to Hamas's military wing, 4% to the Hamas government, and 4% to Hamas as an organization. One declassified letter from a resident in Ramal details how a Hamas Interior Ministry officer raided his home near an UNRWA facility, stealing 17 bags of flowers and 15 aid packages. He wasn't alone. In an intercepted conversation, two Gazans described how Hamas steals aid, selling flour that once cost 60 shekels for 20 kilos for 120. Then in April 2024, Hamas escalated again, stealing $110 million from multiple Bank of Palestine branches in Gaza. Tens of millions were transferred directly to its military wing. This is not a mistake. This is deliberate. This is Hamas's strategy.
Now, another issue that has been reported was in an editorial in the Australian newspaper. This is actually not necessarily new news. I think it was being reported in the past that this is actually a case of a report that's been fudged by the United Nations, where the degree or the level of settler violence that actually is going on in Judea and Samaria is very largely exaggerated. Do you want to explain how that has been exposed?
Among the people who blindly believe anything said by the United Nations without checking is your own foreign minister, Penny Wong. And she sees a report about settler violence and doesn't even check to see who are settlers and what is violence. If a settler is anyone over the pre-67 border, the 1949 armistice line here, that's 2/3 of Jerusalem. I'm standing here in Jerusalem. The border is 1 block that way. They're counting Jews visiting their holiest site, the Temple Mount, on Jewish holidays as an act of settler violence. That's absurd. Thankfully, there are plenty of Jews who go to visit their holy site. Jews have freedom of worship in their own capital, just like Arabs and Christians and Muslims. Between 1940 and 1967, there was no freedom of worship in Jerusalem for Jews when Jordan occupied the city. And thank God we have freedom of worship since then. But that's a crime for Penny Wong. That's anti-Semitism. I'm sorry. And the overwhelming majority of cases of violence in actual Judea and Samaria West Bank territory are Arabs against Jews. This attempt to make the Jewish residents there look demonized in order to equalize it, some kind of false moral equivalence, is ridiculous, and the world should see through it.
Yes, please write to Penny Wong and tell her just what you told me. Not that it'll do much good. I'm coming to probably the last thing I'm going to share, a bit of light relief, I think, to finish off our little discussion here about what you have to deal with. This report that you put on Honest Reporting about Greta Thunberg and this farce of this boat of vagabonds that tried to get to Gaza.
Greta tried to make it look like she was helping the people of Gaza by trying to come to Gaza on a boat. And she knows that there has been a naval blockade of Gaza for many years in order to stop Gaza from having constant shipments of weapons. This is for the good of the people of Gaza. Food is allowed into Gaza and not weapons. But if you have a border that people can just go to and bring whatever they want without being checked, then that is certainly not going to help the people of Gaza, will be just flooded with weapons. People in Australia can understand better than anyone. You need to monitor what can come into a place. And so Israel used the ultimate caution and sensitivity in stopping the boat of Greta and 12 of her friends from coming. They greeted her with a sandwich and water, and only female soldiers talked to female participants on the boat. They came there really to just make themselves look good. They weren't going to help the people of Gaza. They had less than one truckload of aid on that boat, and Israel offered to have that aid brought through normal humanitarian channels. I believe that day you had hundreds of trucks come into Gaza. She was brought to the airport straight from the seaport, and she was put on a plane to Paris. When she got to Paris, she made it look like she was arrested. Her hands were behind her back. And then she talked to the journalists there and said she had been kidnapped. That was ridiculous, and I'm glad that the world saw through it.
Yes, I'll play a couple of the comments that she made when she arrived at the airport in Paris for the amusement of my listeners.
How did the Israelis treat you? We saw them giving out sandwiches on their social media. How did
Yeah, they probably have posted lots of PR stunt videos. As I said, I have not seen anything, but they did an illegal act by kidnapping us on international waters and against our will, bringing us to Israel, keeping us in the bottom of the boat, not letting us getting out, and so on. But that is not the real story here. The real story is that there is a genocide going on in Gaza and a systematic starvation following the siege and blockade now, which is leading to food, medicine, water that are desperately needed to get into Gaza is prevented from doing so. But of course there are many attempts like this mission, both by sea and land, to break that siege and open up a humanitarian corridor.
We've been told that people were forced to sign papers in which they recognized they'd entered the country illegally. Did that happen for you?
I did not recognize that I entered the country illegally. I made it very clear in my testimony that we were kidnapped on international waters and brought there against our own will into Israel. I am terrified at seeing how this extremely deadly passivity and silence is all over the world, leading to so many deaths.
Greta Thunberg is, I quote, a young angry woman. She needs anger management sessions.
Well, I think the world needs a lot of more young angry women, to be honest, especially with everything going on right now.
Just to taper off here, Israeli Hasbara, as it's referred to, or Israeli diplomacy, is demeaned by many Jews around the world, saying it's been totally ineffective at dealing with what Israel is doing. Now, this obviously presents an opportunity for you at Honest Reporting. If the Israeli authorities, the Israeli government is not doing its job, that creates a vacuum, and Honest Reporting can slide into that vacuum and try and do the job that many Israeli bodies, government bodies, Department of Foreign Affairs, you name it, perhaps should be doing a better job of doing. What do you have to say on that score? Your business is obviously not going to be impeded by what the Israeli government is doing, as I have to skeptically say.
David, I understand the skepticism, but you're asking me this right after asking me about Greta, and there I think the foreign ministry, which was put in charge of the public diplomacy of the visit, the army did not put out a single tweet Everything was handled by the foreign ministry really sensitively and professionally. They convinced the world that this was a selfie yacht rather than a humanitarian flotilla. And so I think that they've learned from lessons. They're getting more funding than they did before, and they're little by little. But yes, there's room for ordinary people throughout Australia who care about Israel, who are view the Israel connection to be a part of the effort in protecting Israel from false charges around the world from biased media. When you see something reported incorrectly about Israel in the Australian media or the international media, please send it to action@honestreporting.com. And we can use our social media and our behind the scenes channels to get things fixed. This isn't a war of little facts getting wrong, even though the other day another British media outlet referred to Tel Aviv as our capital. This is a war of narrative. And it's very important that the world understand the true narrative here, because the war is about to end over here militarily. And the fight on the media battlefield is going to be continuing. We need the world to understand that we are spearheading the effort against radical Islamic terror around the world. We need the world to understand that Israel has made the world a safer place. Honest reporting has been leading the fight on that media battlefield, but we couldn't have done it without ordinary people who care about Israel in Australia and places around the world. So please share our content on social media. Please subscribe at honestreporting.com. Subscribe at honestreporting.com/subscribe. And if you can help this effort, honestreporting.com/donate. We are a small nonprofit that would be appreciated as well.
Yes, I think we need to collaborate with one another to share the issues that come up, and to send your concerns off to Honest Reporting. I think you'll find that it'll be handled in an incredibly professional way. But on the other hand, I'm happy to hear from reports that are native to Australia, because I think we have our own battleground here, and in some ways we can, if we unite here with the forces that we have here on the ground, we can do things to affect the way that our media treats this vexed issue of the Israel conflict on many, many different fronts.
Indeed. Thank you, David. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.